Bandwidth for MacBreak is brought to you by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
Welcome back to MacBreak Studio. I'm your host, Mark Spencer, and today with me is Brian Gary. Hey, Brian.
Mark, how are you?
I'm just doing great. How about you?
Very well, thank you.
All right.
You're
always doing so great.
I feel great. Right. You look great. I love it.
What are we going to talk about?
We're not talking about compressor. We're actually going to be talking about I know, step back.
Wow.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about some creative stuff today.
What, compressor's not creative?
It can be.
Okay.
But now this is like solely
so much
creative.
more?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see what we got.
Often, you find yourself with an opportunity to take a series of stills to turn them into a panorama that you can then ultimately move into Final Cut Pro and do your Ken Burns effect, whatever you want to call it, or your move across.
Okay, like pan and scan.
Exactly. Before I actually get into Photoshop, where I'm going to show you how simple it is to do it, I got a Canon 7D here, and someone told me a really, really good trick.
Can I borrow this for just a minute?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'll see you later. Where'd Mark go? So here's a 7D, and normally when I was taking the stills for the panorama, what I was doing is normal landscape mode because ultimately I wanted to be shooting a landscape picture. So I'd take my shots. But this person gave me the great tip of turn it in portrait mode. Then take your shots. Again, you want to overlap.
Take more.
You got to take more, and you're still overlapping 20, 30%. The more you overlap, the better it is. And then you take it. Because in the end, you always are dealing with that, perspective on the edges.
This warping thing that happens.
Yeah, but you have more kind of junk area that you can then crop out at the end.
Okay.
So, I've already, I shot all these originally in RAW. This was up in Alaska, at a lake house in Alaska. We were on a scout for a movie. And, I've already kind of cropped them into landscape mode and used the JPEGs instead of the raw images because we're on a notebook.
So we're looking at one of the original photos here?
But I cropped it down into landscape mode because it was just too big, to deal with on here.
Yeah.
So just to give you an example, I've got 4 shots here. Ultimately, when I made it, which I'll show you the end one, I had about 12 shots. Again, because I was I shot it all in RAW.
Tall and skinny.
So what you would do is the best way to do it is load all of your images into Photoshop first. And you can see I've got Photoshop CS4 here. And so they all just kind of line up
Come up as their separate tabs.
I have my, as if we were a good cooking show, I've got my finished ones over here.
Okay.
But let's say I didn't have those here yet.
Yep.
But I have my 4, what are going to be my elements.
The pieces you want to merge together to make the panorama.
Right. So once you have them all loaded in, and you're going to see why in a second why it's important to have them preloaded. Just go under File, Automate, PhotoMerge. Okay? So CS4 really introduced some nice automatic features. You no longer needed to be on a tripod. You didn't have to be draconian about your exposure and all that because it's really going to do its best to match everything across.
So you shot these just handheld. You weren't on a tripod. You weren't precise. You were just standing there and click, 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 click.
Yeah, and I kind of kept my arms close to the body and just tried to be as still as possible.
Yeah.
And it was good enough light so I could,
And you try to make the exposure so it's not constantly lock your exposure.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that
interface looks familiar. That's been around for a while. Right?
It has, but the auto, and the blend images together and the vignette removal and everything and the distortion correction.
Yeah.
That's where the algorithms have really tightened up in this version.
So the interface is similar, but the underlying process is much better.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the reason I said, already have your files opened up is because you see this add open files. So I'm going to click that and it says they must be saved first. That's because I have my other 2.
Okay.
So you can see right here, I'm just going to remove that
because that's the one that's done, right?
So let's just say I have here my 4.
Okay.
All I do, and I'm sure that there's people out there who say, oh, you can go in and you can tweak it. I've found that I get great results by just going auto. If I feel I need to have some distortion correction, I'll put it on, but it adds time to the encoder.
Right.
Or the transfer.
Processing.
Yeah. So I have them all in here, and then all I would do is click OK.
I think it's funny you said encoding because you're still a compressor guy at heart. You just can't let it go.
Photoshop is encoding my images. So, but like a good cooking show, I'm going to actually go back to the oven now, and here's one that's already prepared.
And it doesn't matter. It figures out the order Like it figures it all out.
Yep, figures it all out. You just kind of line them all up. So when I did this one, it actually had 12 images in there.
Okay.
And I did it on an 8 core, and it crunched for a while. On this, I was testing it earlier today on this notebook. These 4 images, it would take about 4 minutes or so, 5 minutes.
To put it all together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
they're large images. They're like 6 or 10 megapixel or
18
megapixel.
Yeah,
wow.
because it's the 7Ds.
Yeah, you can tell my camera's a little older when I'm like 6 or 8.
So the post-merge, this is what it looks like. So you can see it, made whatever adjustments it needed to. And here's what I was talking about, giving yourself more room because you'd want to come in here and use the crop tool.
Yeah, so
and
you can
get
go straight
rid
across.
of all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So that you end up with something.
So no longer looks like the Sydney Opera House.
Exactly. So then I would accept that.
Okay.
And then we crop it down. But what I want to show instead is, I'll just cancel this out, is when I actually used all 8 images and I had the full the full breadth of the portrait mode.
Yes.
This is what I ended up with.
Wow.
So there you can see.
And what I'm also seeing, you're at 8.19% size right now.
Yes, this is a very big image. So if we were to go up here, image,
a mural.
Yes, image size. You can see this is 12,000 by 3,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
So,
and you don't see any seams in there at all, or any sort of change in exposure, or anything. It's beautiful.
And just so you know, I didn't cheat. If you look down here, all I did was smart sharpen. I just added a little sharpening to it at the end.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
you didn't need to go in and do any corrections or cloning or anything like that?
Nope, this is basically what came right out of Photoshop. I used the raw files instead.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then I will not actually do this in Final Cut, but I could go into Final Cut and then just do a pan across the lake like that. As I'm just moving across.
So you brought this image into Final Cut and you just did a little
just
keyframes.
2 keyframes.
Okay.
And did it all in the canvas and just moved it to where I wanted to go.
Fantastic.
Now, if you don't have a 7D and you just have your iPhone with you, there's a really cool app, and it's called AutoStitch.
Yep.
Now, you do all this on the camera, meaning you take your shots, and again, you kind of like build around an image, take as many as you need to get your overlap, and then you actually then open up this application. It looks in your library. You pick the shots that you want, and then you say go. And same thing.
And it puts it together.
You don't have to put the order or anything. It places the puzzle together.
And it looks like you can do ones that are not just horizontal, but you can do up and down as well.
Which I'll show you. I actually imported, the stems, we'll call them, into all my shots. I did the Disney Concert Hall. So you can see I took all of these individual pictures.
Yeah.
And then AutoStitch created that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's from an iPhone.
A $3 application on the iPhone.
And all created, shot on the iPhone, and stitched together on the iPhone.
And all I did here was just import all those images, including the final, into iPhoto.
And no color correction or anything.
Nothing.
Just raw there. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Useful stuff. Wow. And very interesting, too. Very creative.
Well, yes. It was very creative, if I say so myself. Not technical at all.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Mark.
And thank you for watching MacBreak Studio.